town has no identity that makes it recognisable.
It's changed a lot, but it's still nice, and I like it anyway.
It's too crowded, isn't it? Got all these office blocks closed up. I like the country.
If I knew what a soul was, my answer to that would be, I think, that it's finding one. I think it would be very difficult to define its particular character and personality. I think it's serving a purpose, you see, for the whole of this area. I think if it didn't exist, you'd have to invent it, because it feels to me like primarily a place where there's lots of new money. And of course, in a wealthy part of the country in which we're set, that's a very important function for it to have. But it's new money primarily from affluent working class people. People who really are better off than they've ever been before in their lives, and are using their wealth in a quite new way.
In many ways, of course, Basingstoke was invented. In the late 60s, they took thousands of Londoners out of London and put them into the countryside. Basingstoke was one result. Certainly, it's a success as a working town, but what about as a community? Can you give a town that extra something that makes it live? Recently voted one of Europe's most boring towns, Basingstoke has always been a bit of a joke. So why did people leave the bright lights of London?
Hello. Morning. My, this is a grand way to start the day. Bit different from what it used to be, I can tell you. I can remember like it was yesterday. It wasn't half so comfortable. Took a bloke a good hour to get to work. As for the view, if you can call it a view, you needn't ask when you were getting near the town. You knew without looking. Still, what could you expect with drab-looking houses and ugly factories? Not even a blooming place for the kids to play in.
But there were people, many thousands of them, living in very, very bad conditions in London, and it was deemed necessary that Basingstoke would take up to 11,500 new dwellings. So that was the first aim, and of course in so doing, it had to be done with some speed. So we had the Town Development Agreement in 1961, and that allowed for the 11,500 dwellings, plus all the associated infrastructure, schools, churches, community buildings, open space, and the like.
Most of the old Basingstoke's gone now. From the little market town of 25 years ago has arisen the business boom town of today. 16,000 new homes, 38 schools and 500,000 square feet of shopping space, all in 15 years. Not to mention a population which surged from 26 to 76,000.
I liked it because it was cleaner, and I didn't really like living in a high-rise flat. So, and we had a place as a house. I found it strange that we were a long way from everything. It was used to sort of being able to go from one town to another, whereas here the nearest town's Reading or Winchester, and it's quite a distance. That seemed strange. It felt as though we were in an island, really. The only way out was to get on a train.
I was born in London. We lived in Balham, and my mum didn't like it there. And a friend of hers told her how nice this place called Basingstoke was and everything. And my mum, being gullible, she thought, oh, well, I'll move up to there. And she came up, and she really regrets moving up here now because, as she said, I mean, my mum's not the sort to go out every night. She hardly ever goes out. But she says by 11 o'clock, it's dead. All the lights are out, everyone's in bed and asleep by 11 o'clock. And, I mean, she thinks that Basingstoke is good for jobs because my mum came up here. I mean, she's a nurse anyway, but she doesn't like it, and she'd like to move back to London or go over to America with her family.
I can remember 20 years ago or so when there was some resentment, obviously, between people who were living here then in Basingstoke and people who came in brand new with their thrusting new ways, very properly. And obviously, if you try to mix that, it doesn't mix extremely well. On the other hand, it mixed quite well after a few years.
The early settlers came in search of better homes and jobs, mostly in light manufacturing. That was in the 60s. By the early 70s, the London overspill had dried up. Anyway, Basingstoke by then was selling itself as a business centre. The sort of people moving to the town had changed to match the new office-based jobs. Oddly, in a town which exploits its closeness to London, many ex-Londoners who left family and friends there have never been back.
You haven't got the amenities down here that you had in London. But those are things that if you move to this part of the country, you can't bring with you. So you tend to adapt.
Well, the reason I came, I was offered a house and a job. I had a job in London, a bookbinding job, but they offered me a binding job down here in the print and a house to go with it, so we decided we'd move down here, and I'm glad I did.
All right, I left friends there, which I've never seen since, and that's 17 years ago. But, and this is the way of life, isn't it? You have to adapt.
My down, isn't it? Help. 300.
I don't think one should idealise what was going on in London in the 60s. I think that already that kind of cohesiveness was beginning to break down because there was more money around and so on. So I think it's a temptation to idealise that bit of the past. I suspect that Basingstoke is much more typical of what's happening and what's going to happen in the whole country, really, as time goes on.
I missed, I suppose, in a way, because we had family there more than anything at first. And we'd always sort of kept in contact a lot. He's from a big family, and my dad was a big family, and we tended to see a lot of each other at that time. So that felt strange, and I think a lot of other people felt like that had left family behind there.
Was it easy making friends when you first came down?
When I was working, I only knew the people basically who I worked with and the people next door. When I left to work to have a baby, I met most of the people through the clinic. Other mums that had just had babies at the same time. There wasn't really any other way to go. They had a coffee morning thing for mums and toddlers, but I didn't go to that a lot. And that was basically it.
The great thing about the estate in those days was there was an enormous number of young children. I mean, and as you know, I mean, the great thing about children is that they make friends, and therefore the parents make friends as well. So I think there was a sort of great sense of companionship in adversity, really. That's how they coped, by moaning about the council and just getting on with life. I think that's how they managed. But yes, I think it was very different. Different in the sense that there weren't the roads around that there are now, and different also because it wasn't the life they were used to. For instance, one of the things they found very difficult was the fact that in the streets in Popley, the pavements are kept well away from the road. And they really couldn't cope with that at all. And so you'd see them walking their prams down the road rather than on the pavement, because the pavement wasn't next to the road. They were used in London to seeing, the pavement right next to the street. And I think little things like that were really quite difficult for them.
We thought everybody would be the same as when you lived in London. We found at first that everybody tended to want to stay very much on their own. At that time we had a tenants association which fought for different things like phone boxes and eventually did get shops, and there were such things as stewards that used to take round newsletters every couple of weeks, and that was nice, but that faded in the end. There wasn't really a lot of places to go. The town centre one is built up as it is now. I think it was just sort of the main first stage area.
It's one of the ironies of Basingstoke that Popley's Anglican Church is the local Catholic school. After 16 years as Popley's vicar, Bill Ind is about to leave. It's 16 years in which a community could have been created.
I certainly don't think you can artificially create a community. I think it's got to be organic. And I think there are signs that that's happening. Here, for instance, for the 2 royal weddings and for the Jubilee, there were some marvellous street parties and a real sense of community in the little closes and houses and so on around. And I think that is here and does grow probably, but it's very slow. But I don't think we should be surprised by that, really.
Was there any sense of social planning behind it, or was it all just the bricks and mortar that were concentrated on?
Well, it's certainly not only bricks and mortar. I mean, you can't produce a living community with just bricks and mortar, obviously. Those were the more material considerations. But it was realised early on that there ought to be a social cohesion. And that was because, with the sheer speed of the development, we realised early on in the 1960s that people would regard family life as being their linchpin. And if they were yanked out of London suddenly, they would lose the extreme benefit of grandparents and other relations around them.
Each neighbourhood must have its own
churches,
community centre,
shopping districts,
and lots of pubs. Right next door to me.
In each environmental housing estate, for example, we would produce a small set of shops. There would be one large shop plus 3 or 4 small ones. There would be a site for a church. There would be a public house. And very importantly, room for a small community hall. So you can imagine those spread over the 6 or 7 environmental areas around the core of the original town. That might be a good fairly graphic way of saying that we tried hard to involve the public early on and to allow them to meet and to allow them to make the use of their local social facilities.
You can't really blame a town for being what it is, but I wouldn't say it's a really horrible place, but I mean there's nowhere to go. I mean you even come into town on a Saturday and you go for a drink in the pub, and when that finishes you sort of walk about town aimlessly. You know, sit in the wimpy till about 4:30 or 5 o'clock and then you go home.
Sunday night is roller disco night. In fact, on Sunday night, the roller disco is virtually the only game in town. To be honest, on most other nights, Basingstoke is hardly overburdened with places to play. Certainly not if you're young, free and single and would like to eye up the opposition.
Basingstoke's all right if you're a fitness fanatic. I mean, because there's 2 swimming bars, there's 2 sports centres, but not. I mean, I'm not the fittest person in the world, so I mean, I don't want to go to these places. I mean, I just like to go out and see my mates, and there's nowhere to actually. I mean, say if you didn't like music, there's nowhere to go, is there? Say you just wanted to sit down and have a quiet chat. There's nowhere to sort of say, oh, I'll meet you there.
My dad came down from London a few weeks ago and he said to us, oh, would you like to go to a restaurant and go out for a meal? What time was it? About 3:30, 4 o'clock?
It was earlier than that and everything was shut.
We couldn't find anywhere, so we ended up in the Wimpy.
We went everywhere, went up to, the pizza place and everything, all shut. Everything was shut.
Chinese, everywhere.
Nowhere was left. So, yeah, we just walked down and found ourselves just sitting in the Wimpy like we do every Saturday.
Yeah.
You'll certainly hear plenty of complaints about Basingstoke, but then you'll hear plenty of praise too. Mostly it breaks down into generations. The early settlers had young children who've grown up in a town where there's nowhere to go, and the planners have relied on market forces to provide, only they haven't. The kids have been left out in the cold, except on Sundays. In fact, you might say that in Basingstoke, if you're teetotal and can't skate, you're in big trouble. Unless, of course, you've got wheels.
I think with Basingstoke, it opens at 9 o'clock and shuts at 5. It's very businesslike. One of the best things about it is it's easy to get out of, and you can, once you're on the motorway, you can take your pick really to Southampton. Again, it's not too far, easily. As far as Camberley or Southampton or Guildford, it's just variety. They've got a lot more pubs, a lot more wine bars, at least a couple of nightclubs. And basically you've got a choice, as opposed to having your mind made up for you if you want to go out for a late night with your friends.
But if you're always going off somewhere else, is Basingstoke home?
It is home. It's a nice place to be based. Obviously, you need to live somewhere, and I can think of a lot worse places to live than Basingstoke.
Well, I don't think people really go out and look for things. We always find plenty to do. I've got 2 kids, and we find lots to do here. I think people will sit down and expect something to come to them, without going out looking.
So it's a nice town to live in?
Yeah, I like living here. I certainly wouldn't go back to London anyway.
Maybe in a town so carefully planned as Basingstoke, you notice the missing facilities rather more than you would in a place where everything's just evolved. The planners argue that they're getting there, and you can't expect everything to happen overnight. But they still haven't got the civic hall envisaged in the original plans. And in towns which were built to plan, people expect much more to be laid on for them.
Basingstoke is expanding in industry, so I think they should expand other ways as well. I mean, you can't expect to have new buildings, new office blocks, and not have anywhere to cater for the people that live about, the place.
Yeah. I live and work here and earn my money here, but I certainly don't spend any of my money in Basingstoke. It all goes elsewhere.
Canada, they've all trooped down the motorway, set up their glass and concrete tents and prospered all the way to the bank.
To begin with, Basingstoke wasn't even in our minds. We set a number of criteria. We had got to move because our existing building was too small. So it was either a move and redevelopment in London, and with all the costs associated with central London, or a move outside. So we started a very extensive search by listing some criteria of what was important to us. Communications. Sun Life of Canada has a branch network around the country of 40+ branches. We have a fair amount of traffic back and forth to them, so we wanted good road communications, rail communications. We're an international company, so an airport within reasonable reach was important. Secondly, obviously we had to have the right site. We wanted 100,000 square feet of office space, so we got to find somewhere with planning permission, preferably already in existence for that sort of scale of building. We also needed an available pool of labour, not just initially, but for years into the future as we recruited replacements for our existing staff.
Churchill Plaza, 150,000 square feet of so far empty offices. And this is the skyline which in the next 10 years will include the equivalent of 5 more Churchill Plazas, which means more people, more houses and more strain on already unsatisfactory facilities. Could the pressure from all those new immigrants make Basingstoke a less attractive proposition in the future?
I think as staff, now we have made the move, are very pleased indeed. We mustn't underestimate the dislocation that a lot of them have had to go through. But now they have moved into the new office, are working in a much better environment, have cut down their commuting, have settled into their new homes, beginning to make their friends in the community. I think the staff are very, very satisfied indeed.
Isn't there a danger that if you expand the town too much, you destroy those things that make it attractive, the green spaces?
Yes, except of course you must realise that when you plan for new growth, and with the long experience we've now had at this town and with the Hampshire County Council as the strategic planning authority, we've learnt our lessons, I think, the right way round, that we want to bring in the facilities to service the new population with the new population. And so land for new housing will have to march side by side with land for those facilities. So I can't see that new growth per se will undermine or override the goodness of the town and its facilities.
What can businesses like yourselves do to help integrate themselves into a new community like this?
I think as far as a business like ours is concerned, where the primary thing we're offering to the location is, if you like, economic well-being, we're bringing jobs for now and for the future, is to get ourselves known, what we're about, what prospects we offer. And to that end, we spent a lot of time really with the schools and colleges. Even before we moved down here, we would go along to the sixth form college, we would make presentations about the kind of career available in insurance, what training we could offer. We made a modest contribution to the college to assist with a sixth form maths training complex they were developing. Importance to us because people with a numeric background are important for our jobs. Important to the college because it helped them in these more difficult economic times for funding to do something that they thought was of value.
Everyone claims they've tried to build a community here. So maybe it's Basingstoke's very prosperity that's stopping them.
I think there is a division in places like this that was not there before council houses were sold. Now, I actually think it's all right that council houses are sold. I don't mind that, though I actually wish the money was reinvested to build more houses cheaply so people could afford to live in them. Because I think all we're doing is increasing the sort of very social divisiveness that a new town presumably was meant to get rid of. I think people are much more, when I say self-centred, I don't mean selfish, but I mean they're much more concerned about their own private life now and maintaining their own place than they used to be. I mean, I do find that people forget very quickly what it was like for them when they first came here. And it's very interesting that some of the people who, for instance, are most against council tenants were the people who themselves, 7, 8 years ago, were council tenants. And they seem to be saying, look, if I did it, why can't they? And then this estate would actually become a better place.
I'm telling you, it works out fine. Just you try it.
I suppose now I tend to think of it more as home. We've been here 15 years. I don't feel if I go to visit anyone back in Dagenham or London that I'm actually going home anymore. It's when I come back.
We think, from what we've seen, both in our preliminary planning stage before we moved here and in the 3 months since we started up in May, that there is a community here. We see evidence of that in our activity with the schools, their willingness of the school leavers to seek employment and to want to stay in the area. I think that's perhaps the biggest positive vote for the area, that the people who have been educated here are very keen to continue to live here and to seek jobs here. It's an indication of an empathy with the environment.
I'm lucky that I belong to a couple of things where I can meet people, i.e. the church and, again, Scope. But if I didn't have those, it could be very, very isolated here, very isolated. You wouldn't, apart from going around the shops, wouldn't see many people.
Oh, I think there's a hustle and bustle about the place, you know. There's a lot of new buildings. It's always worse when there are a lot of old buildings, of course, but here we've got brand new buildings. We've got the excitement of these office blocks going up. We've got space for a few more of those yet. And I like to see people enjoying themselves. I like to see people being fed and clothed well. I like to see people who can shop and have a great variety of shopping. And certainly in our town centre, I think I'm right in saying you can probably find almost anything you want to buy if you search for it.
The thing, my overwhelming feeling is a feeling of sadness about leaving it, because I actually love living here. I love the people in all kinds of ways, the humour and the warmth and the vitality. But as I say, I mean, I do think it is changing in a way that I wouldn't have thought it would have done when I came. It's much more middle-aged, I suppose, much more secure, much more arrived. Doesn't feel on the frontier anymore.